Hey you guys, I'm Jack Ruston. Welcome to Ruston's Boneyard. Yesterday on Instagram I posted a little video clip of a beef and mushroom pie that I made for my dinner, and my friend, the wonderful Black Carnivore Eddie Fox, suggested that I do a video. So here I am. I'm going to show you how I make this. Obviously it's not strict carnivore because it's got mushrooms, but it's pretty carnivore adjacent. It's certainly keto, and it conforms to my ideal, which is sort of single ingredient, whole, unprocessed foods. So let's get going with this. Let's show you what we do. First of all, we've got these organic chestnut mushrooms. Chop them up like this, roughly. They don't need to be beautiful. So I'm just going to pop a little bit of tallow into my skillet here, and I'm going to cook these mushrooms off. I'm going to just put some salt on them and a little bit of black pepper. Just season them slightly. Get those in there. Now, another thing I'm going to add here is a little bit of fresh thyme, and you could absolutely leave this out. If you're carnivore, you don't want to add any plant material, whatever, leave it out, it's no problem. Or you can go further. You could add chopped onions, chilies, you could add coconut aminos, or any kinds of seasonings, flavorings that you prefer, whatever you tolerate. Mushrooms have been an interesting one for me. You know, when I started to reintroduce plants on top of my carnivore diet, I found some things really worked better than others. And one of the things that has worked very, very well for me is mushrooms. And it's really the only plant food that I include day to day. Those have got a little bit of color on them now, and they've just lost a little bit of water. I'm going to move them back onto a plate, and you can skip this whole step. You just put the meat straight in with the mushrooms, do it all together. But this way, there's less chance, if your mushrooms are a little bit wet and have a little bit higher water content, there's less chance of more water coming out and slightly kind of making the meat steam, which is something you always want to avoid with meat. You don't want it boiling, and enough water can come out of the meat on its own. Okay, so we've got our mushrooms, we've got our nice hot skillet. Let's just let that build up a little bit of heat again. I'm just going to put a little salt into the base of that skillet, and then I'm going to add my meat. Now this is just ground beef. I've got quite a high fat percentage here, and I really would recommend that. I strongly suggest, if you possibly can, grind beef yourself. It's so much better when you grind it rather than buy it ground, because as it sits after it's been ground, they grind it in these long stringy pieces because it's usually a big piece of chuck. So they grind it and then it just dries out and it goes kind of stringy and rigid. But you could get your butcher to grind it for you when you buy it. That's better, but best of all is to grind it yourself. What I'm doing is I'm just poking this down into the skillet, and I'm not going to start tossing and turning it. What I want is for the base of this to sort of form a bit of a crust. Season now. This is just Redmond real salt in my grinder. I'm going to be quite generous. Pepper. And I'm going to add my thyme. And I'm going to put my mushrooms, scatter them over the top. Prod a few of them, poke them through so that they make contact with the base as well. Now for the top of the pie, we're going to use Maria Emmerich's protein sparing modified fast bread recipe, which is basically egg whites with a little bit of egg white powder and salt. So I'm just going to separate my egg whites. For this size of skillet, this is a 12-inch large skillet, I like to use 7 or 8 eggs. I've got 7 here. Okay, now this is cooking off pretty well. This is an optional step. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add some reduced bone broth to this and just let it cook out. Now, you can use whatever bone broth you want. You don't need much. This is not something I bother doing day to day. The point of doing it is that it's going to add a little collagen into that meat and mushroom mixture. It's going to cause it to go slightly stickier. So I'm just going to let that cook out. We don't want it to be watery under there. We don't want it boiling. We're just going to put a little bit in and let it just cook out on high heat. I'm just going to beat these 7 egg whites to stiff peaks. So we've got these nice stiff peaks. Now one way you can test to see whether they're ready is to just invert the bowl above your head. So what we need to do now is take some egg white powder, and I'm going to add about a 1/4 cup. And we're going to season reasonably well with some salt again. Now, we just mix that through. There we go. And I will warn you, as you can see these little flecks here, once you put the powder in, it does tend to fly around a bit, so don't do it when you're decked out in all your finery and just quickly cooking for the kids before you go out. So here we've got our beef, and I'm just going to take some egg, just a little bit at a time, and I'm going to spread it quite sort of firmly onto the base of this. And the reason I'm doing it this way and not just dumping it all on top is that I want this egg at the bottom to form a kind of layer with the meat. Now I'm going to take all the rest of it and just spread it around on top like this. Here we go. And this, I'm just going to be careful to keep the kind of air into this layer here. You know, I've smushed a bit out at the bottom just to get it to form up that base. So here we go, and this is just going to go into a 180-degree oven, and it's about 375 degrees Fahrenheit, 180 degrees centigrade, and it's probably not going to take much more than 10 minutes. Here we go. You can just cut these big wedges of this like this, scrape it out, try and get the meat to sort of stay with it. But as you can see, you get this lovely kind of sticky, crusty beef and mushroom underneath. So I tend to hold it this way up and just, super tasty. Give it a go, make it your own, have a good day, keep cooking.